What's up, YouTube? This your main man, AB the Hero, back again with another video. And today, man, I wanted to talk about this Colin Kaepernick situation with the Nike and the ad and everything that's happening around that. Now, a couple days ago, this ad came out from Nike. Colin had this on his Instagram. I seen it. I thought it was dope. It was reposted by everybody: LeBron James, Swiss Beats, the Breakfast Club, anybody who has ever spoke out on this issue. And this ad, for some reason, just seemed to be extra controversial, especially when you think that, you know what I'm saying, it's Colin Kaepernick. The caption here: believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And what I think was funny about this ad is that alright, so it was there on his Instagram first. Then, you know what I'm saying, there were some billboards that popped up with it, and the ad, the commercial for this, is supposed to go live on television today during the first game of the NFL. You know what I'm saying? So the thing that I find very funny is, and it's something that I've talked about in some of my other videos, is I think that we in this space now where we see like a headline, or we see something salacious, and then before we even get the whole story, we already have an opinion. And I think that this ad brought that out of a lot of people. Where you see Colin Kaepernick, you see the headline, and you automatically have an opinion without doing any due diligence or figuring out what's the ad about, what's the campaign. You just know it's Nike, just do it. And then so this thing sent people crazy. But the ad was released today, a little bit early, or yesterday, early before tonight's game. So we got it here. Let's take a look at it.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it.
That's more like it.
So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Every time I watch that, I start to tear up just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? It just touched me in a way. No, I'm just playing. I don't tear up, but I think it's a dope ad, and I think that is something that there's a message there that a lot of people can benefit from. You know what I'm saying? I think the skill or the ability to pick up on and learn. I remember being a kid and wanting to be a writer and wanting to do these things, and people just telling me, yo, people who look like you, man, you don't do that, man. We do this one thing. We play sports. We do all of this stuff. So I think that when you take a company like Nike, who's been pushing that and taking this message and giving it to folks, I think that it's a step in the right direction on multiple accounts. I think that it's funny to me how you can watch this commercial and then understand the ad and then all of the people who are a part of it, but then have a negative reaction to it because of the person who's giving the message, because for some reason you don't believe in what they believe in, and it kind of I think that catches me off guard just a little bit, man. And one of the funny things about this too, so obviously this ad was controversial for a lot of people. A lot of people started talking about how, man, you know what, now we finna go out and buy some Nikes. They're supporting the culture, all of these things. Then you had a lot of other folks who decided that, hell no, we burning our stuff. We're not buying Nikes anymore. And this is the thing that I find interesting, right? I think that historically you have these moments where people will be upset about something and decide to like riot, tear things up, and protest in these different ways. And one of the biggest criticisms of that is always that, why do you protest and you riot and you tear up things in your own neighborhood, right? And I think it's funny because when you look at this a lot of people's backlash is they go in their own closet, get their own things and set it on fire, cut their own belongings up. And it's the same thing as when you have some people who are very upset about something big enough to where they go out and they tear up their own neighborhood. And I think that you see that on the smaller scale here, whereas we get caught up in these moments where things trigger us in a way that, but not enough to where things trigger us in a way that we want to send a message that we're so frustrated that instead of going out and like really doing some damage, we're so frustrated that we'll like self-implode our own things. And I find that very interesting, because if you really were upset with Nike, you wouldn't go cut up the stuff you would already buy. If you wanted to affect the bottom line, you would go out to the Nike store and shut it down so they can't sell any more product. But I think that that's interesting when you think about when you have riots and revolts and that stuff. It typically starts in-house, and then all of a sudden you think that what's happening to your own neighborhood or your own like belongings is going to affect the greater good, and in most cases it doesn't. I also find it funny that, and this is something that I'm sure Nike's happy about, is once you cut up your Nike socks and your Nike shoes, and in a lot of these clips, which I find is interesting, but to me this ad also does not surprise me at all. I was watching this video the other day, and LeBron James was on this like world tour promoting the ideal of being more than just an athlete. So when you have LeBron James, Nike's billion-dollar man, probably the guy who generates a lot of money for them, you know what I mean, and just not sales but also brand awareness, because from what I understand, the LeBron James line of shoes is not their like highest selling line of shoes, but the brand awareness that he brings probably trumps all of that stuff. So when he is on this mission of trying to get the message across that you can be more than an athlete, it makes sense that Nike would then find a way to partner with a guy like Colin Kaepernick, who has solidified himself in history as being something more than an athlete. This is a dope little video you should go watch. LeBron James, he's over like it was in Shanghai, China, talking about being more than an athlete. But I will say that the biggest thing to me when I think about this fallout, right, is not the consumers, right, not people in power and how they are affected by this, right? So I was reading this article here, and it talks a lot about the police and how the police are responding to Nike's ad with Colin Kaepernick, right? And they posted this here: the National Fraternal Order of Police then released a statement about Nike partnering with Kaepernick and how they feel offended and assaulted by that. And then initially how they wouldn't necessarily say, yo, we're going to go out and protest, but, you know, we'll keep that in mind when we buy things. And then this here was another a letter that I found that was supposedly sent directly to Nike CEO Mark Parker, and where they go into a little bit more depth, and then they say that they will use their power as the Fraternal Order of Police to then like boycott Nike, and then their involvement with Kaepernick and all of those things, right? And then you go a little bit deeper, and then you have the National Black Police Association, who then responds to the National Fraternal Order of Police with, we're all not feeling the same way as they are, and then they are going to support Nike in this, right? So for me, man, it terrifies me a little bit when you think about like the police and the people who are supposed to be protecting you, and how they can be drawn on these lines, right? You would hate to believe. And then in one of these articles they talk about one of the things that offended them so much is when Kaepernick had this, like, the pig socks, right? And that's the thing that comes up. People say he doesn't like police because he's a pig socks, and which I understand that. But what's crazy to me is that when you have folks who are in power like they are, who years later are still upset about these pig socks, right? And what does that mean? He don't like pig socks, so we're not messing with him. It shows the emotion that gets tied into a lot of these situations, and to me that's scary, because if you're going to be a person in power, and especially in a job like being an officer, which takes a ton of sacrifice, you have to be able to like be somewhat thick-skinned. You're going to be in situations where people are going to be upset with you, and you then have to be able to act on your best judgment and step back and step away from it, which a lot of officers do. But then you see some of these situations where they can't. I watched a video the other day where this young lady I think spit on this officer, and he just went to go beating her up brutally, and it makes sense to a lot of people. They say, well, she shouldn't have spit on him. But it's, to me, when you're in that position of power, you have to be able to like step away from those things and then come back to it and maintain control. You don't know what's happening with that lady in that moment, and obviously you don't know what's happening with that officer in the moment. But even when you're being paid to do that job, you have to step away from it. I remember back, I used to work at this junior college over the housing department, and two things happened. There was this moment where this one kid was like high on perks, or I don't know what it was, them uppers, downers, whatever, but he just was crazy. He was chasing me around the parking lot, and I'm trying to like get the police there, and he wants to fight, cussing me, every other thing that he could come up with, and I just stayed away from it, right? I just kind of avoided him until the police came, and then they handled the situation. Shout out to them. And then there was another and what was funny is that all of the kids who were around watching, they couldn't understand why I just didn't two-piece him and lay him down. And I was like, because person in my power, that wouldn't look right for in that situation. And then also another thing happened where I had my son, he would come to campus with me, and there was these kids who were playing pool, and my son grabbed some of the pool balls and messed up their games. And this one dude grabbed up my son by his arm and was like, man, what, talking to him, and then kind of tossed him over on the couch. I'm watching this thing happen, and my son is crying in tears, and this is when he's like 3 or 4. So then I go over there, I grab my son, I console him, and I talk to him, and I come back out and I grab the kid and I talk to him, and I let him know, look, if he does something that makes you upset or that you don't like, you don't have the power to grab him. You have to come and talk to me about it, and I'll handle it, right? And we had this brief conversation. The kid goes off to his room, right? And then a couple months later, he comes to me, and we're sitting down talking. He's about to graduate, and then he talks to me about one of the biggest things that he learned there is in that moment where, in him growing up, if a kid did that, the first thing that would happen is that kid would be a spanking. And him growing up, if he had done that to somebody's kid, it would have been an altercation right there in that moment. And then he totally respected the fact that instead of me getting extra aggressive and wanting to like have a problem with him, I was able to maintain control of that situation, and we could talk. And then he kind of learned a little bit from that moment, and that to me was, I was happy about that, because I felt like that was dope, me being able to, that was something that I wasn't even intentionally doing in the moment. I just felt like that's what I was supposed to do in that moment. I wasn't trying to have a teaching moment for him, outside of, yo, don't touch my son, without, you know what I'm saying, letting me know if something's going on. So I think that I think that as officers of the law, they have that similar responsibility to not just to not just be able to step back sometimes and allow a situation or somebody in that situation, knowing that they may overreact or act crazy, to not fully like dive in with your ability to arrest, beat up, or whatever, because you're within your rights as an officer. Sometimes you have to step back and have a teaching moment that you're not even attempting to have. I think if that happened a lot more and also was publicized a lot more, you wouldn't have a as big of a divide. But to me, that is something that out of this situation makes me more concerned than like whether or not folks are buying Nikes. It's when you see the president of the United States will hop in here with a tweet about this and sending the wrong message, and you see all of these people who are in power feeling some type of way about a company choosing somebody to sell their products. And what is the trickle down effect of that, right? What's going to happen when somebody get pulled over with a whole thing on Nike? Is that going to enrage you? You know what I mean? Just those type of things. That's the kind of stuff that I think about, man. But I was going to do a video about this, and I really decided to do a live stream because I wanted to hear what you all thoughts were about this situation. You know what I'm saying? And so I wanted to go here. That's all kind of my thoughts for a second, but I'll go through some of these comments and hear what you all think. So Hamtastic, man, shout out to you real quick. Let me swap back to the powerful. Colin is a legend, straight up. He's him getting on the sword, standing for something. I think what's interesting is that I wonder if at the beginning of this if he knew that this would be him getting on his sword, you know what I mean? And I think that there was a moment where he definitely realized that his stance was going to be bigger, was going to cost him a lot, and I think that is dope that he didn't backpedal from it and that he went forward with it. But I feel like it's super interesting to think about, like, if in that critical moment when he decided to do it, was he aware that it would cost so much? He didn't lose everything because he rejected multiple contracts from the NFL teams. That's the best part of all this. Scoobity whoop. History is being made. I think that he probably... What's interesting to also think about with that is if those contracts came with a stipulation, you know what I mean? I can imagine that there would be some contracts that were extended with, you can come here, but let's just calm down on this extra, on this and that. I agree with you. Black Minoan. History is definitely being made in this situation. I'll burn them, maybe get a tax right off. Oh, exactly. I've seen that the meme come out and kind of be passed around a lot of, hey, don't burn the shoes, don't throw them away, give them to people in need, give them to veterans, all that stuff. Hatred for black people will never die, and it's been alive for many years. I think the funny thing is that yeah, racism, I can see that where racism in America is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think it's because so many folks people don't realize how beneficial it is to be divided and then to have some type of hatred in your heart for different things, right? When there's these classist systems, it is extremely beneficial to be at the top of that system, right? And then when you start seeing those things break down, you go to that one incident that happened with the dudes with the tiki torches, and their biggest message was like, yo, the power that we used to have, we're losing it, and we need to do something to get it back. And when you listen to a lot of the supremacists talk, that is one of the biggest rhetorics that they have, is that there's this power that was once held that is being diminished, and they want to do whatever it takes to get that power back. I got in a Hall of Fame RKO. I don't know what that means. Man Ball would have gotten a Hall of Fame RKO. So, I don't know. That's a interesting topic, man. I seen that, and I felt like I wanted to talk about it on here, and I wanted to kind of get you guys' opinion on that. I guess this ad is going to run officially during tonight's NFL game, and what is also funny about it is, I guess the NFL was unaware of Nike's intentions to have Kaepernick in there, and then also to run this ad during the game, which is also a big deal because then Nike is one of the biggest sponsors of the NFL too. So I'd be interested if the NFL's tune on a lot of these social issues changes because of Nike's involvement now. And I think it's also interesting too, when you look at the ad, it doesn't really like, it speaks to the sacrifice of Kaepernick, but it doesn't really speak to the issues in which he sacrificed for, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of people's like outrage over it's kind of misplaced, again, because even if you don't agree with Kaepernick's stance, like, that's not what the ad is about. The ad is about something completely different, and I think that it is dope that they have given him that platform, and also the check by doing that. Those people who burn shoes also burn crosses on Black people. I feel like I seen that somewhere too. Somebody said that people are burning Nikes because they don't have crosses to burn anymore. But that's an extreme take, but it's a very interesting one. When anywhere they were forced to hide due to equal opportunity laws. Facts. I think that's something that I've been saying forever. I watched this first time I realized that, right? One of my favorite movies growing up was I Remember the Titans, right? And there's a scene where they're originally going to school, and let me point this out. A lot of the things that in that movie are not historically factual. But there's a scene that I remember watching when they were going to school, and we seen and there's all of these people outside, and they're protesting, and they're all upset that there's this integration happening in this movie. And I remember thinking, like, damn, where are those people at today, right? When you go watch the behind the scenes of that movie, the coaches and everybody who was involved are still around. But then I'm thinking, like, man, where are the folks who, like, did not want this to happen? They have to be around here somewhere else. And when you hear all of these different stories about history, you realize that a lot of these folks aren't gone. They're still around here somewhere. And you have to realize, are their thoughts, have they changed yet, or are they just hidden? And that's and obviously that you're thinking of things in a way that is not productive and is a little bit crazy. All right, let's see. But so I don't know. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about, man. I wanted to get y'all thoughts on some of that stuff, but hiding behind patriotism, I feel like that's been a huge discussion with maybe Black Man Money. Slow down the advancement of the BBB sales by supporting the true Black figure. I don't know if that's the case, man. I think that there's definitely a lot of space for everybody to eat, and And so if that was a strategy, then you would think that folks would then say, nah, we not support Nike, we finna go over here and support the BBB, which, you know what I'm saying, I don't think that it's the same demographic. Yesterday's racist thoughts still live in the minds of their descendants. I don't know, some people change. Bum, bum, bum. Colin Kaepernick, give him some bread. I think one of the big things that I hear when a lot of people like initially address this is they always talk about the monetary benefit that Nike is expecting to have, and they wouldn't have done it without doing all of the research and making sure that there was they would have benefited from this financially. And I don't know, if I assume obviously Nike is a huge corporation, they probably do have these product testing groups and all of these things. But all right, yo, we're finna get out of here for real this time. It's your main man, AB the Hero. I'm out. Peace.